So, good morning, class. Welcome back to our English class. Before we start, may I know how's everyone?
I'm okay, ma'am.
All right,
I'm
thank
I'm
you
doing
very
doing
much,
fine.
fine, ma'am.
as well as LJ and Trisha. That's good to hear that everyone is okay. Um, since everyone is okay, let us proceed to our discussion. So, to formally begin our class, I want you to read this short story. This short story is entitled A Very Long Life. So, who could read at least this up to 1854? Yes, LJ first.
A very long life. Timothy the tortoise was about 160 years old when he died at his home near Exeter in November 2005. Timothy, whose early life was spent at sea, was thought to be the oldest resident in Britain at the time. He was found by a British naval officer, Captain John Courtney Everard, on a Portuguese ship in 1854.
Yes, Erica, please continue.
Everard, who was a relative of the Earl of Devon, adopted him and he became the mascot on a succession of British ships for nearly 40 years. In 1892, he went to live at Powderham Castle, which is the historic home of the Earls of Devon, and in 1935 he was given a permanent home in the castle's rose garden.
All right, thank you, Erica. Anne, will you please continue reading the story?
Throughout his long life, Timothy showed a keen instinct for survival. During the Second World War, for example, he felt the vibrations from the bombs that the Germans were dropping on Exeter and made his own air raid shelter under some steps. He was also very healthy, never needing to see a vet until the last year of his life. At the time of his death, Timothy was owned by a Lady Gabrielle Courtenay, who is the aunt of the current Earl of Devon. Lady Devon also lives at Powderham, where Timothy was given a family funeral and was buried in the grounds of the castle.
All right, thank you. Um, I have here some lines that I gathered from the story you have read. So, will you please read the first sentence here? Yes, Erica.
Timothy the tortoise was about 160 years old when he died at his home near Exeter in November 2005.
All right. So, as you can see, we have here a word that is being highlighted. So, I want you to uh, take take notes of these words. Next sentence. Would like to read? Yes, Anne.
Timothy, whose early life was spent at sea, was thought to be the oldest resident in Britain at the time.
All right. We have here the next one. LJ, will you please read?
Everard, who was a relative of the Earl of Devon, adopted him and he became the mascot on a succession of British ships for nearly 40 years.
Very good. Next one. Who would like to read? Yes, Erica.
In 1892, he went to live at Powderham Castle, which is the historic home of the Earls of Devon, and in 1935 he was given a permanent home in the castle's rose garden.
Good job. We have here the next sentence. Anne, would you like to read?
At the time of his death, Timothy was owned by Lady Gabrielle Courtenay, who is the aunt of the current Earl of Devon.
All right, very good. The next one is LJ. Will you please read?
Lady Devon also lives at Powderham, where Timothy was given a family funeral and was buried in the grounds of the castle.
So I have here a question. So since that you have read the short story and some of the lines that um, I gathered from the story, what have you noticed? What have you noticed with the highlighted words or the words that are in different color? Yes, Erica.
Those are relative pronouns po.
Very good, you got it right. Those words are relative pronouns. So, um, does anyone knows? Does anyone know what is relative pronoun? Yes, Anne.
Relative pronouns connect the relative clause to the main clause in a sentence.
All right, thank you. Relative pronouns. The words that are being highlighted a while ago are relative pronouns. So, example of relative pronouns are who, which, when, whose, and where. Will you please read again the examples of relative pronouns? Yes, LJ.
Who, which, when, whose, and where.
All right. So, relative pronouns are used to join or relate two different clauses together by referring to the noun in the previous clause. So, just like what Anne said, relative pronouns are used to join or relate two different sentences or two sentences. I have here the rules when we are using the relative pronoun. So, when we are about to use the relative pronoun who, uh, it should be refer for people. Again, who is used to refer for people. People, and while whom is used to refer to a people also, but in different um, situation or scenario. Here we use whom when we are referring to a people that is the receiver of the action or the object of the sentence. While we use who when we refer to the subject of the sentence. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Next relative pronoun we have here is the relative pronoun which. Relative pronoun which are used is used for subjects. The next relative pronoun is whose. Whose is used to show possession, while the relative pronoun where is used to refer to places. Again, relative pronoun where is used to refer to places, while when is used when we are referring to time. Do you get that? Do you get that, class?
Yes,
Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
Yes,
ma'am.
clear?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Alright, thank you for answering. So I have here some examples. The woman who lives next door is my cousin. Who can identify which relative or what relative pronoun is used in this sentence, and what is um, what is the noun being referred to the relative pronoun? Yes, Erica.
The relative pronoun is who. and it refers to the subject, the woman.
All right, very good. So in this sentence, we use the relative pronoun who to refer to the subject woman. So the woman who lives next door is my cousin. Next sentence. Anyone? Yes, LJ?
Is there anyone here whose mobile phone has a signal? The relative clause in this sentence is whose mobile phone has a signal.
All right, so we are looking for the relative pronoun. So the relative pronoun used in this question is the relative pronoun whose. So we use whose to refer to someone who has a mobile phone that has a signal. So is that clear, class? Again, we use whose to show possession. So we use whose in this question to ask or to to know if anyone has a mobile phone that has a signal. All right. So let us proceed to our next sentence. Who would like to answer? Yes, Anne.
The relative pronoun here is where, and the noun that is referring to is she. It is New York.
Any
Is
other?
New York.
All right. Thank you, Anne. Um, the relative pronoun used in this sentence is the relative pronoun where. The relative pronoun where is refers to the noun New York. So again, when we are using relative pronoun where, we are referring to a place, and New York is a place. Um, Last example here is who raised her hand? Yes, Erica.
The relative pronoun used in the sentence is which, and it refers to the object house.
Very good. In this sentence, we use the relative pronoun which to refer to the noun house. Um, all right. Since it looks like all of you get our topic for today. Going back to the definition of relative pronoun. Relative pronouns are used to join or relate two different clauses together by referring to the noun in the previous clause. So this clause has has two types. We use relative clauses to join two sentences or to give more information about something. The first type we have in relative clause is the defining relative clause. So the defining relative clause tells which noun we are talking about. So take a look in this example. Who would like to read the sentence? Yes, Erica.
Lady Devon also lives at Powderham, where Timothy was given a family funeral and was buried in the grounds of the castle.
All right. So can you identify what are the two different clauses that are being combined using our relative pronoun?
Ma'am, can you repeat the question po?
Can you identify the two different clauses that are being combined? If you cannot identify, I will do it. So the two relative clauses we we have here is Lady Devon also lives at Powderham, and Timothy was given a family funeral and was buried in the grounds of the castle. So those are two sentences that are being combined using the relative pronoun were. So the relative pronoun were here identifies the Powderham, which is a place. Is that clear, class?
Yes po.
All right,
Yes po.
thank you. Um, the next type of relative clause is the non-defining relative clause. Who would like to read the slide? Yes, LJ.
Non-defining relative clause gives us extra information about something. We don't need this information to understand the sentence.
All right, so non-defining relative clause gives us extra information about something. We don't need this information to understand the sentence. So this relative clause is just an additional information um, about the subject or about the noun. Let's take a look at the example here. Will you please read the example? Yes, Anne.
Timothy, whose early life was spent at sea, was thought to be the eldest resident in Britain at the time.
So, will you please identify uh, which part of the sentence is the non-defining relative clause?
Whose early life was spent at sea.
Very good. So the non-defining relative clause here is whose early life was spent at the sea, because when we omit this or when we remove this clause, the sentence still could be understand or it's still understandable. Is that clear?
Yes po.
Yes po.
All right. So before ending our class, I want to ask if you have any questions or clarification rather.
None po, ma'am.
No,
None
none po,
po.
How about the
ma'am.
others? All right. Thank you. So if you don't have any questions, that's all for today, class. Thank you for listening, and let's see you in our next class. Thank you.
Thank you po,
Thank
ma'am.
you po, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.